everyone. I'm a content specialist here at Manta, and we're excited to get started on our webinar this morning. Before we do, reminder that we are live tweeting this, so find us on Twitter at Manta. Feel free to send in your questions there or on the webinar platform. Both are fine. We've got Christine Pratt and Whitney Magruder here with us today as our panelists, and we're going to be spending some time talking about how to revitalize your content strategy.
Awesome. So I'll introduce myself real quick. I'm Christine Pratt. I'm the head of content here at Manta, and I have about a decade's worth of communication strategy work that I brought to the company. So part of the marketing team here and love working with content every day. It's great.
Excellent.
Right, and I'm Whitney. I currently moderate the Writer's Domain blog as well as my own website, Wit and Travesty, both which connect me with indie authors and editors, and so content is a huge part of my business.
Yeah, great. So first things first, let's talk definitions. Oftentimes we'll talk about content and not really know how to define it. So Christine, what exactly is content? How should we be thinking about it?
So content is, it's a very broad definition, but essentially it's anything with words. And yes, I realize that's overwhelming. And yes, I realize that that is a lot of things, but you can dial it into more specifics. And we've listed a whole bunch of things that are growing in popularity right now. These are all things that you should be including for your business. Podcasting is definitely something that is growing in popularity recently. A webinar like this is a form of content. Social media, including the pictures you shared, that's definitely a form of content. And then, basically down even to the signage that you have inside your store, that also can be considered content. So I know that that is such a broad definition, but if you use it strategically and with purpose, then it can be for all of these things. It can definitely be for your business's benefit.
Great. Okay, so with that definition in mind, Whitney, let's talk a little bit about how content is necessary to get you found online. Here we have a pretty basic definition that we think works well. Content is the way that you communicate with your customers, deliver your message, and get found online. So talk to us about the importance of that.
All right, so with getting found online, Google has a lot of rules, as many of you might be aware, of what is considered good content. And when you're following those rules, generally SEO practices, Google is going to help you get further up on a first page search. And so when you prove that you are regularly following these rules, that's how you get found. So it's it's a mix of being good with your SEO practices while also sharing a bit of your personality. After all, it really is hard to stand out in your own industry. So your content lets you introduce yourself in a way that just having a standard, very plain website won't help you do.
Great. Okay, so you mentioned SEO. Why is content for SEO so integral to a good strategy? Christine, can you speak to a little bit about that?
So, excuse me. Essentially, for the purpose of this webinar, we're going to be talking a lot about SEO. That's something we work on here quite frequently. Your content is essentially what helps you get found. So whether it's your social media that's enhancing your brand, that helps your business get found. If it's your blog, you're writing specific topics that people want to read about, so that helps you get found. For some of the other information on your website, people want to know, kind of about the products and services you sell. That gets you found. And so all of these things are essential for SEO, and we'll kind of dial into a few more of the specifics a little bit later regarding keywords and other things. And so all of this, basically content gets you found.
Okay, so talking about content for SEO, what are some components that you must have on your site in order to get found? You mentioned a few of these. I wonder if you could walk us through that one more time now using Manta's homepage as an example.
Yeah, so this is one of our web pages that we have. We've got a couple things highlighted here. Your blog, your description of services, contact, and your social media. These are all things that you absolutely must have on your website, no matter what. These are things that Google looks for when it does the crawl to be able to find it, to work on your SEO so that people will find you when they're searching for the products and services you offer. And I'll go into just a couple details. So your blog basically shows why you're the best at what you do, and it helps you build on the relevant keywords for your businesses to grow your organic search reach. So this is in no particular order. These are just kind of the order that we have them on our site. You can have them anywhere on yours. For social media, links to that. So this communicates out your blog content or other types of content to help you reach more potential customers. So you need to have these social links on your site so that people can find you and connect directly with your brand. And then I can't emphasize this enough because I've seen it so many times where they don't have it in an easy place to access, that every single website must have contact information for your business. Crucial for Google to be able to find your business name, your address, your phone number. We call that your NAP information, name, address, phone number. Also, if you have an email address, that never hurts to add in as well. So this information needs to be easily accessible. That's for Google to find, for your potential customers to find, so that your site will rank higher. And then it's also really important to have a description of services. So here for us, it's kind of towards the top. A lot of websites have it under the About page. Sometimes it's on other pages, but the key is to make it very easy to understand in a place that's easy to find, and that just gives a very quick explanation of your business for potential customers.
Great. Okay, the first thing you mentioned was a blog, and that's where we're going to be spending a majority of our time today. So Whitney, with her experience in blogging, is going to walk us through 3 key aspects that every company blog should have. So Whitney, take it away.
All right, so the first point is content related to your industry or services. This is an opportunity to let you and your industry shine, as opposed to maybe other personal interests. I would recommend saving those for social media, just that you're a bit more personable. But for your blog itself, it should be very related to your industry or services. Second, you should have some internal links or buttons to your services. So internal links is basically when you have a clickable link to another page on your website. It could be to another blog post, for example, or it could be directly to your contact us page, your services page, whatever is relevant to the blog. Google generally likes those kind of links, so I'd recommend having at least one in each blog post. And then the third item is content that adds to the conversation that doesn't repeat common knowledge. So what we mean by this is that generally with each industry, there's some kind of conversation going on. We're sharing information with each other on these blogs, and a lot of times people will engage with very basic conversations that maybe your viewer or reader might already understand. For example, if you have a plumbing company, people probably already know what plumbers do. That's why they're looking for you, is because they have that problem. But you can take a step outside of the basics and add a little bit more to that conversation. That shows that you are proficient at what you do, that when you say you have 15 plus years of experience, you really mean that. And you might help someone figure out that they need you, or they would rather work with you than, say, any other person in your industry.
Great. Okay. When we actually get down to the nitty-gritty of creating content, we have some pretty simple do's and don'ts. So I'm wondering, Whitney, if you could tell us kind of what are some things we absolutely must do, and at least one thing that we should absolutely not do when it comes to creating content.
Right. As if we haven't given you enough do's and don'ts already. These are really important. So the first one I want to talk about is proofreading. At least proofread once through your post. Don't immediately write something and then shoot it out to the world. There's a lot of people who do this, and it might come across as unprofessional or uncaring to your readers. And you also want to make sure that you're basically giving a clear idea of what you're trying to convey. And so proofreading errors might get in the way of that. It might actually totally change the meaning of a sentence or so. So definitely proofread. It might help to have someone that you trust do the proofreading in case you feel like it's hard to proofread your own content. The second thing, we can't recommend this enough, is setting a content schedule. So what this is you're looking forward in the future. Maybe it's just a month, maybe it's a quarter, or it's a whole year. But you're setting a schedule for what you expect to publish on your blog through a certain amount of time. I recommend doing this. That helps with fighting against writer's block. It helps with making sure that your content matches your marketing goals that are coming up. So if you have a big sale coming on, a blog post can really help you describe what's going on with the sale, why people should take advantage of your lower prices, and such of that nature.
You can do it for your social media as well on the content.
Yes.
For sure. So you can plan out some of your social media posts so that and then schedule those out so you can kind of see the bigger picture of what you're promoting.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have all of that planning on one calendar. If you have multiple calendars, you might find yourself being confused, and content shouldn't be confusing. The third item is to publish your content on social media. Christine talked about that, about making sure that you have some posts on social media. And we'll talk a little bit more about social media later, but I would just recommend that once you publish a post, you're not quite done yet. Make sure that it's on your social media, your newsletter if you have one. Just basically put it on blast because everyone needs to enjoy your content. And then fourth, do not neglect your blog, even if you get busy. And I know that this can be hard, especially if you're not a strong writer or you simply don't really see yourself blogging all the time. Maybe that's not why you went into your industry of choice. But as we mentioned with the content calendar, that will help you so that you've got a regular schedule. Even if you have zero content right now, I'd recommend just starting one blog post a month, keep it regular, and then just keep gradually adding more until you have just like a comfortable schedule.
I can't emphasize the proofreading thing enough. Can't. Like how many posts that we've gotten on a regular basis that someone just hasn't read it over once. Like I know it sounds so simple, but proofread your stuff. Promise.
Yes,
it will help you.
We all make mistakes, but a lot of them are easy to catch.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Spend some time trying to figure out where they are. All right, so a little bit more of a deep dive into blogging. It's the lifeblood of a lot of industries, or at least it was. So some people may think, well, now that we've kind of moved past the late 2000s era of blogging, it's really not as important anymore. But in fact, it actually really is. So why is blogging still essential, and how do we use it strategically?
All right, so blogging is still essential because, as we mentioned, blogging is just a simple way to take off all the check boxes that Google wants to see when it comes to content. A lot of times it will push down websites that, they're having some tumbleweeds, they're not being used very often. Even if you're not blogging, at least touching up your website pages usually helps with this. But it's very similar to having a storefront that people aren't sure if you're open or not. If you have a regular thriving blog, people definitely know that you are available and ready to help them. So that's kind of why blogging is still relevant, even if it feels like social media or email lists are becoming more popular, more stressed.
Definitely.
Excellent. Yeah, I think it's really important to remind ourselves that really at every point in the creation cycle, we should be asking ourselves, what is it that my audience needs to know? Figuring out ways to answer that and reminding them that we're the industry leaders, we're the people that you want to talk to, we're the people who can answer your questions. That's
Exactly.
fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself what they care about, what they want to know, and then if you can't answer that, then you probably need to figure it out because that's your customer base.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got our content, we're targeting those keywords, we are answering the questions our consumers are asking, we are trying to become the source that they go to get the information that they need. But how do you get your content in front of the people who really need to see it?
That's a great question. So to get your content ranking, this goes hand in hand with the SEO I was talking about a minute ago. So essentially, your search engine optimization, your SEO, helps raise your website in the rankings on Google. So for example, if you have a tire shop and you're in, Nashville area or something, and someone searches tires in Nashville, you want your website to be able to show up there. So that is basically what SEO does. And so to get your content ranking, there's several ways to do it. If you're going to do it in-house, use a sheet kind of like this. This is an example of one that we use here at Manta on some of our content sheets. So we use the example of social media influencer, as you can see there at the very top line. And so these are essentially keywords that we write about. So there's a few different tools. This is using Google Keyword Planner. That is a free tool. There's other ones like SEMrush that is paid. There's one called Ahrefs that's also paid. We use all of those, but essentially these will all help you find your keywords that people are looking for your industry. So I'll just quickly walk you through some of these columns so you can kind of understand what we're looking at here. So when you go to a website like Google Keyword Planner, it has just an open form field that you can put in your own website URL, and then it will search for a few minutes and ultimately give you a list of keywords that Google thinks are relevant for your website. So when we're looking for social media influencer kind of thing, that is the example that we're seeing here. So you can see like what is a social media influencer. A few down is just social influence. What are influencers on social media? So all these are somewhat similar, but they're all different. So this is what we would call a long tail keyword. So it's almost a whole phrase. So I know keyword is, yes, technically a singular word, but all of this would be considered a keyword that you can write about and answer in your content. So sorry, Google will provide you the keyword here, and then what else you're seeing here on this sheet, the minimum search volume and the maximum search volume. Those are your next two columns over. Essentially, that's over a month. So in a really, really good month, you could see up to 1,000 people searching for this in your area, or only 1,000 or up to 10,000. And then it also searches for how many people are searching for that, and how many people are also ranking for that. So what is a social media influencer in the area we were looking at, for example? It's not really a keyword that people are looking at. So if you wrote a blog about this, there's a good chance that it would start ranking for you in your general area. And then the rest of the columns in here is kind of ancillary data that it gives you based on Google's algorithm. And there's other things that you can do to kind of bid on a keyword. That's a little bit more competitive if you're really fighting for some of those big keywords and you have a lot of competitors in your area. But we have made this sheet available for download here on the webinar, so you can download it, kind of play with it a little bit in your own field, and then go try Google Keyword Planner. It can give you some really good insights on that.
Excellent. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we actually create the content we want to have ranked. So we know that all three of us how exhausting content creation can be. Maybe writer's block, we might have a really busy week, or we may just kind of be out of ideas. And at the end of the day, we still need to have something to put on a blog or on our social channels. So how do you get off the content creation treadmill gracefully, not like Miss Swift here in our photo, and actually get to creating content that's going to be useful and applicable to the consumers we're trying to reach?
So there's many different ways. We've broken it down into 4 different ideas here. This is stuff that we use internally. We'll break down each one of them specifically here in just a second, but you can go through, you can create a new content under a new URL. That's probably the most popular. Updating and refreshing the current content. It may be a couple years old, but it's still really good. You can recycle the URL, or you can combine your content. There's a lot of different ways to create meaningful content that your customers want to read.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's talk about a little bit more, each of these a little bit more in depth. So Whitney, first and foremost, creating new content under a new URL. This seems pretty standard, maybe something that most of us here would automatically think this is the first avenue we're going to try when we're creating content. What are the benefits about doing it this way?
Right. So some major benefits of just creating a fresh new URL is you get to apply a lot of the tips that you've learned here. So if you have a new drive to create some great content, you can start it right now by creating a new post in your web hosting website. And something that I really appreciate is that when people are subscribed to your blog, or if they're subscribed to your social media, they will get a notification as soon as you hit submit or whatever the button says. But as soon as it goes live, it immediately goes in front of the people you want to see it. And so that's great if you've got a lot of people who are on your social media or on your email list. And as you can see in this example, when you create a new URL, it generally puts the title of your content as like the very end of your website. So it'll say, like in this example, local search versus SEO. I'd recommend putting your keyword there, a shortened version of your title, anything but just a weird series of numbers, because that's just like a basic SEO thing that you can do immediately when you create new content.
Excellent. All right, next we're going to talk about updating and refreshing your current content. So how do you actually go about updating content you've already published?
So this is for things that are maybe a couple years old that is still really good content, but maybe is slightly outdated, or you were ranking for it at one point and now you're not, so you just kind of want to bring it back to the forefront. So I don't think this is a field that gets utilized nearly as frequently as it probably should, but this essentially helps your website stay relevant. So, I mean, you can track how well your content does through Google Analytics, a few other different types of platforms and plugins that you can put onto your website. But for posts that are a few years old, but still get a lot of traffic and rank well, you can just go ahead and update it. You can add the new sections, you can update the old information, replace the images, optimize your alt text. Those are things that where you use your keywords that kind of helps Google find you. And then, like Whitney said a minute ago, make sure that your keyword is in your blog post heading, and maybe that's also within the image description. So this essentially ensures that your target audience can better find your posts.
Great. Turn that post into
Mm-hmm.
Cinderella at the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Next, we're going to talk about recycling the URL. So,
Yeah,
how
so
do you
when,
do that?
yeah, when we recycle a URL, that basically means that for some reason or another, the SEO for that URL is doing great. It's just that the content itself could use either a major overhaul, or maybe your internal links could use some refreshing. So, and you can see in this example, they have reshared their content. They've used the same URL, but they've rewritten most of the content, and then they added a disclaimer. This post was originally published March 2015. It was last updated on May 29th. And that's really helpful if you're presenting some content that people are even using as a resource for their own website, so that they know that this content is updated and has been refreshed, as we talked about with updating already published content. So it's kind of opposite of updating already published content in a bit, in a way.
Yep. It really enhances to your readers that you're building your own brand, that you're constantly updating your information so that they know that they can count on you for the latest and greatest.
Establishes a sense of trust too, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Christine is going to talk about the last portion here about combining content. And you have a nifty little phrase that you use to describe this mode of content creation. Can you tell us what it is and how it works?
Yes, it's kind of Halloween related. So, I threw this GIF on here, but it's what I call Franken content, because you're combining different things from different places. So you can see an example here where we haven't actually done this, but it's an example of when we could. So these are two topics that are somewhat similar that we've written about. Secrets contractors won't tell you, and the secret to finding a right contractor. So all the content in both of these could very well fit within the other one. So if you wanted to, this is definitely an option to kind of enhance your overall authority. This is something that's definitely trending with content right now, that long form content, word like pieces that are 1,500 plus words long, or even longer than that, is actually doing really, really well in the SEO industry because it's showing your expertise. So if you have two posts like this that are both doing okay but not getting great views or great traffic, you can kind of combine them. So essentially it's taking some pieces from one piece and adding it to the other. So if I wanted to take the secret to finding the right contractor, the general contractor isn't a master of all trades, but then kind of added into the secret contractors won't but should tell you, that would easily fit. And then I would just redirect any traffic that goes to the secret to finding the right contractor over to the secrets one. So that way you're getting the best of both articles, and people will find kind of the long form one instead of finding both and maybe not getting all the answers that they need. But this is definitely kind of a fun way to enhance your content. And if you're struggling to find something new to post, you feel like you've written about a lot of things that your readers would already be interested in, this is definitely an option for you.
Great. Okay, so in this scenario, we've written the content, we put the keywords in, we're trying to get it to rank. Now we get to show it to people who actually want to see it. So Whitney, talk to us about how we actually distribute our content so the right people see it.
Right. So if you are using something like WordPress or other related websites, you can already connect your blog post to your social media. So you can connect it with your Twitter handle, your Facebook page, Instagram, even LinkedIn, I believe. And so as soon as, like I mentioned before, as soon as you hit publish, it will immediately go to those social media platforms. And I'm more familiar with WordPress, but now with some updates I've had, there's even a little box where you can add just a brief description of what people would learn or why they should click on your link. So you can say like, we're answering your questions about XYZ in our industry, click to read more, as opposed to what sites normally do, which is just the picture, URL, and the title of your content. Depending on what your title looks like, people may not have 100% idea of what they'll find. So first of all, if you have it connected to your social media, that's always a good avenue. And even if you've published stuff that is a couple months old or even a year old, you can still use social media to be like, hey, did you see our recent post? We talked about this. You can remind your viewers that you wrote this awesome content, and that's a good way to get more views without having to necessarily write another post. So you can do that. And then also newsletters and email lists. You probably have read or studied about this a little bit, but newsletters are pretty great for people who tend to check their email inboxes more than their social media. And I would recommend you posting it to both. Basically, send it to everyone and everywhere, because with algorithms and other things that Google has in place to organize all this content that's being pumped into Google and all your social media platforms, it's good to just put it on blast, because only a fraction of your people are going to see it. And so keep those in mind. I would recommend having someone in charge of your social media or someone in charge of your newsletter, and just make sure that they have access to your content calendar so that they know this is the next blog post that we're promoting, or we want to make sure people are aware that we're sharing it. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's lots of ways to get people, if you're having a struggle to get people to sign up for your email list or whatever. I mean, that's definitely something that I've been like, wait, how do we actually get more people to subscribe? I mean, you can do it simply from the point of sale. How many times have you been at the mall and they ask for your email address right as you're checking out? I mean, that's something you can do no matter what your business is. There's always going to be a point of sale at some point. So ask people what their email address is. Or if you have an e-commerce, you already have their email address because they're buying it that way and you're sending the confirmation. So make sure those get added to your newsletter distribute list. Or if you don't have that, or you don't want to have a newsletter, same thing, point of sale, ask people to follow you on social or put that near your door if you have an actual storefront, things like that. There's lots of different ways to get people to subscribe.
Great. All right, so let's talk about some key takeaways. Everyone listening here is going to log off in a few minutes. What can they do starting this afternoon to actually start crafting better content?
So our first example is adding your keywords into the meta. So if you look at this example of the local search versus SEO, your meta description will go in that bolded dark gray section. So that's a good place to put a description of basically what they will learn or why they should click on that link. So for example, with the local search versus SEO, that meta description will probably read something like, what are the pros and cons of local search versus SEO? Click this blog post to read more. There's definitely a word count for that. So definitely look up the character amounts to make sure that your meta description fits. And we'll talk about the other ways, the other key takeaways, but WordPress plugins are really good about helping you make sure that your keyword is in enough places without sounding very spammy.
Yes. There's lots of different WordPress plugins, like what you mentioned. Yoast is one that we've used. There's other ones called Jetpack. There's several different ones that you can kind of look up to install into your WordPress, or if you use other sites, there's a lot of these apply broadly, not just to WordPress, but that's what we use internally, so we know that. Similarly, there's Google Analytics plugin that you can add as well that gives you so many different insights into how many, or the time on site for your entire website, not just your blog, but your whole site. The number of people that come within a certain time frame, you can measure it over 1 year and then compare it to a previous year. There's all kinds of things you can measure with your analytics. I would recommend Google Analytics or something else. Definitely install some sort of analytics plugin onto your website so that you can kind of see just, you know, what kind of posts that people really like, and then start writing more towards that. You can see where maybe you're losing some people on certain pages, they're not spending as much time, so you can spend more time on those, enhancing it, or maybe take some of the other pages that are succeeding and be able to kind of share the same data onto the ones that aren't doing quite as well.
Yeah, and these analytics will also help you figure out how people are finding your website. So that might be figuring out which social media platform is your favorite or where you can find your future clients. It might help you know if other people are citing you as a resource. That's always very nice to see. So if you ever have questions about what kind of content should I post, what do the people really want, yeah, Google Analytics and the plugins will definitely answer a lot of those questions for you.
For sure. And then we've already talked about the content calendar, but again, like both of us have mentioned, we can't emphasize that enough. That will help keep you organized. If you can only do it once a month, only do it once a month. If you have the resources and the time to do it more frequently, or even when you do have a little bit more time, I know we're heading into the holiday season, which can be really crazy for a lot of businesses. Start planning it out now and maybe start writing a little bit now so that it's not neglected when you get to that point. And then also one thing, we do SEO services here at Manta. A lot of people use SEO teams to be able to enhance their website. So key takeaways for both your content and your website in general is to regularly check in with your SEO team to monitor your keyword progress. These check-ins will help you kind of pivot when maybe something isn't working as well as you would like and kind of helps you understand the process. That's definitely crucial.
Fabulous. I think it's key just to remind everyone that if you want to be a leader in the industry, you have to stay on top of your numbers. So finding a way to track those and enhance them when they're low is really critical. All right, to finish off, we wanted to talk about a couple resources that Manta offers that may be helpful as you go about trying to create better content that gets to the heart of your consumer need. First things first, Manta listings. So SEO and websites are important, but they can't really do anything if you're not listed on the web. So through Manta, we can help you get your business information across multiple directories, making sure that lots of people are able to find you regardless if they're searching on Google or on Bing, Manta, or another search engine site. Once people are able to find you through those avenues, we want to make sure that they arrive at a website that is beautiful and functional, something that gives your consumer base the information that they're looking for. And so we can help you design a website that works for your consumers, making sure that all the information is easy to find. And last but not least, SEO. Making sure that when your website is up to date, your listings are correct, that you are ranking for the searches that your consumers are making. So the people who are ready to hire you for your products or services will be able to find you as fast as possible.
So essentially consider this your digital marketing roadmap. If you don't really have a digital presence, and if some of the things we've said here about your content seems a little bit overwhelming, don't let that scare you. There are easy ways to start. You can use the listings to kind of start putting your brand out there. Then you need your website. That's much more than just your social media page. Things like that. You actually need a website so that people can find you, and then once you have that website, you can enhance it. So there's lots of different ways to get found.
Great. All right, we have a few questions remaining, and so in the spirit of Ellen, we're going to invite you to send us your questions. So that can be either through Twitter @Manta or here on the webinar platform. And we've got, looks about 20 minutes before we'll have to sign off. So any questions content related, send them our way. We're happy to answer them right here. All right, we've got a few questions here. All right, first one, what about duplicate content when you combine articles? So we've talked a little bit about franking content. How do you make sure that you're not going to get penalized for copying and pasting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would make sure that the one that you're taking everything from and adding it to the other one, make sure that you're making that one so it's we use the term that we 301 it. So essentially it means that people can't find that anymore. So yes, it still exists. People can search for it, but it will redirect to your new post in particular. So you can delete it. That's not necessarily recommended because then that means that the URL is completely gone. No one will be able to find the old post, but you can redirect it so that anyone who's hitting that first one will automatically be taken to your new post. So that way Google doesn't penalize you for repeating the content, but you're getting more people to find the enhanced version, essentially.
Excellent. All right, another question, is Wix a good platform for SEO as opposed to WordPress?
I mean, it definitely depends on which interface you like most. I feel like that's up to you. I feel like Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, they're all pretty good and pretty up to date on helping you with SEO. And I know that they also all have related plugins, so I don't think you're necessarily going to miss out on any SEO help or assistance if you pick Wix over WordPress. I personally understand WordPress more. It is a bit of a learning curve. So maybe if you are brand new to blogging, something like Wix or Squarespace might be more up your alley.
Yeah, it also kind of depends on your business too. So I mean, a Wix site is probably a lot easier to set up than a WordPress site. But there's for sure pros and cons to both. But yeah, and your business type also would depend a little bit. If you have more of an e-commerce where you're constantly updating it, I would recommend a WordPress site because that has some of the enhancements built into it. But do your research a little bit, or you can contact someone who works in this. Like, I mean, here at Manta, we're happy to recommend something for you.
Excellent. All right, we have another question here. She writes, we have an e-commerce site and we also use text marketing to push people to our blog. Can you speak a little bit about the effectiveness of that route?
About having an e-commerce website?
Yeah, and how blogging can push people towards actually making purchases online.
Well, something that I have found effective for me as a consumer is that when you have blog posts that share about, they're talking a little bit more about your new products or your new services, it's good to have a little bit of a long form of what they do and how they could help you. So if it's a product you could buy, it could be something fall related or winter related. So like X number of things you can't do without for this problem you have. Like, I think we probably see this a lot more with fashion blogs because they're helping people put together wardrobes. Maybe you're not super confident about how you would use their scarves or their jackets to put together a really cute outfit for fall winter 2019. But a lot of times, basically, if you can figure out a way to show you can use as many of our products as possible to solve a problem, that's helpful. And then you can use each section to talk about each of those products. So if you were talking about car parts, for example, I know like you might think blogging about cars might seem a little bit off, but you could talk about, okay, so we know that this is the problem. We just recently released this new product that solves these problems, and then you can put that internal link to that product. So that way, if people are interested in seeing a picture of it or the price, they can go there rather than you basically repeating the item description, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's one way you can go about it.
Excellent.
That's great.
We have a couple questions about the concept of the meta or meta description when it comes to blogging. Do you think that you could give us a definition one more time about how that works and the way that the meta descriptions or meta content appears when you actually put it into a search engine?
Sure, yeah. So with a meta description, so if you're doing a Google search, again, for car parts, and you see the blue part, that is the title of the website page, and then underneath it there will be like a dark gray text, and usually that is a long form, so a couple sentences that describe what you can learn from that blog post. So if you're having car parts for a specific car, for example, I'm thinking of the Kia Forte because that's what I drive. So if you're talking about car parts for a Kia Forte, you would put those kind of things in there so people can see, oh, I also drive a Kia Forte and I need to know about these car parts. That may be your keyword, it may not be, but it's good to add just a very brief description of what you can learn from that content. It usually helps people ensure that they're going to find what they need there and that they're not going to be directed to slightly unrelated content.
Great. Okay. Do we have any additional questions? We're going to give you about 15 seconds to write in. Maybe a little bit longer. Type fast. While we're waiting for any final questions to come in, this is just a reminder that if we either didn't answer your question or you think of one after we've all logged off, you can access us through our social channels or send us an email at mantablog@manta.com. And we are happy to walk you through any of the processes that we've talked today, direct you to people who can help you find Manta products that may be able to make it a little bit easier.
We'll also make this webinar available through our YouTube channel and through all our social media, and for that same keyword sheet that I talked about earlier, and I will also post that through our Facebook page, so you can download it there.
Excellent. All right. It looks like we don't have any remaining questions, so we are going to go ahead and log off. Thank you for joining with us this morning. We've enjoyed it.